Hi friends, my name's Georgie. It's such a joy to welcome you to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. Today's guest is MBE Mike O'Shea. Mike served in the Royal Navy for 32 years and completed his service with the rank of Warrant Officer as a member of the physical training branch. Mike's knowledge of health and fitness is second to none. He's a fellow Oxygen Advantage instructor, and it was such an honour to be in conversation with him. I'm so excited for you to listen in. If you haven't already, don't forget to smash that like, share and subscribe button. Let's keep empowering people and ourselves, as a matter of fact, to utilise the power of the breath to find some clarity, to find some relief and feel supported in the chaotic world we find ourselves in. I hope that by having powerful conversations with health and wellness experts across the field, that I can provide you with just a few of the tools to do just that. All right, let's dive right into the conversation. It is my absolute pleasure to bring you episode 6 of Just Breathe with Mike O'Shea. Hi Mike, welcome to the Just Breathe podcast. It's so good to have you on. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you.
Awesome, good. So I'd love to delve right in with your story. There's so much to talk about with serving in the Royal Navy, with dedicating your whole life to fitness and health. And I'd just love to know a little bit about how you came across the power of breathing and how that is so useful for sports performance and performance in the military as well. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, sadly, I've come across breathing rather late in my career, and
It's never too late.
no, but I would rather have like to have been able to use it,
Of
all those
course.
years ago when I was training people.
Yeah.
Um, I, Clearly, it is something now that is coming to the forefront and is becoming rather mainstream. And
Yeah.
like I was saying, if only I could have managed to get some of this stuff earlier. However, having said that, I think as far as I'm concerned, because I've always been a pretty laid back type of character, so I've
Right.
always been fairly relaxed. And even when I was doing my sport and training people, I subconsciously used to talk about, now relax, now breathe. But I didn't
That's
know what I was
interesting.
talking about really. I
Yeah.
didn't really know what I was talking about back then. It was just a subconscious thing. And I do believe in
Yeah.
the genes of where we've come from for millennia ago, where we actually do identify with things that are correct for us and good for us. So it
Absolutely.
was a subnatural thing. But I used to say to individuals, classes, when I was coaching, take your time, now relax and now breathe, get it all back in.
Right.
So that was the sort of the science I had all those years ago. So that's changed.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I remember when we were talking previously, you were telling me about something that you realize now was particularly advantageous with breathing in a sport that's not allowed anymore. You used to carry some really heavy guns.
Well, yes, again, back in my career, we
Hmm.
were lucky, and I was lucky enough to be selected for one of what was called the field gun crews. Now, this was
Cool. Wow.
something we don't have it anymore, unfortunately. It finished in the 1990s,
Right.
um, but it was a celebration of something that happened many, many years ago in South Africa when the Navy took guns, heavy guns, over
Mm.
over terrain
Yeah.
to relieve Ladysmith, which was many miles inland.
Yeah.
And so in the Navy, we had this tradition of actually having a competition. And there were three of us. There was Portsmouth, Plymouth, and the Fleet Air Arm.
Right.
And we trained for 6 months.
Hmm.
and we ended up at Earl's Court in the Earl's Court Arena,
Yeah.
the Royal Tournament. And it was back then, it was very highly thought of. It was televised every
Yeah.
year, it was on the
Wow.
TV. So, and
Gosh.
it was a fantastic, and it was extremely hard.
I
I
mean,
mean, some
yeah,
people,
I bet
I
physically
mean,
and mentally, right?
well, yes, I mean, physically, we used to throw these guns around, which were the weight of an average car, and and mentally, to recover from it was almost impossible actually to physically recover. So the mental thing was quite hard because, it, dare I say it without sounding too egotistical, it was a little dangerous.
Right.
If you got hit, if you got hit by one of these swinging pieces, it sort of left a nasty rash on you, which tended to
Right.
be blood. So, yeah,
Right.
but it was a great time. We loved it. And it's still very traditional that people who did it back then still talk to each other. I mean, the first time I did it was in 1969. And
Wow.
I still talk to colleagues, um, enemies, if you like, of the other crews. To this day, we still chat to each other. So great
Brilliant.
camaraderie in the services. That's one thing you'll never take away. The military, anybody in the military, it's great camaraderie.
Yeah.
Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Of course, that's interesting as well in terms of the sport, I suppose, because it's a team sport, right? So mentally, no, you don't want to fall behind, and if you're carrying such a crazy gun like that, you're gonna push your body almost just past its limits just to keep up, right?
absolutely. And there
Mm.
are 18 in the crew, and so
Wow.
you rely on everybody to
Hmm.
do their little bit. Otherwise,
Yeah.
if it falls down, things collapse. Somebody gets hurt. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when these people in the Navy, because I know you've trained a lot of people in the Royal Navy, when they're actually going out to serve for the Navy or even just getting ready, there's got to be such a mental element in terms of mental training as well, because you can face some quite stressful situations, being in any part of the military, right? And so I'm really quite interested in that in terms of breathing, because breathing can of course be incredible for building mental resilience, for building emotional resilience. And I wonder what your experience of that is in training people in the Navy.
well, again, we didn't have the knowledge then that we have now about it,
Yeah.
and I do know that the American SEALs, for example, have used breathing now for some time.
Right.
Um, Having spoken to some of my colleagues or ex-colleagues who are still have a contact within the Navy, they are
Mm.
telling me that there is some training going on now.
Wow,
Um,
great.
Sadly, they call it mindfulness, which is maybe not the right thing to call it. But I think, and I'm firing from the hip, I
Mm.
do think that they may be using it on today's PT course, the physical
Oh, great.
training course. So
Great.
that's an advance to
Yeah.
do that.
So was
But
was there any protocol back then for sort of building mental resilience, or was it sort of just learn as you go?
I think it was more learn as you go, to be frank. A lot of emphasis is put on the basic military training. You do a lot of things within your basic military training that
Yeah.
builds resilience to stress you might find later.
Yeah.
You do get put in some quite tough situations
Of
which
course.
will build that. And I think, you are, sadly to say, you either get through it or you don't. And
Right.
I think I'm trying to be as honest as possible. That's probably where most people used to build their resilience. Nowadays, of course, we do have more modern science, which helps to in those situations because you are often in a stressful situation.
Right.
You are often in a tired situation. You often need a break. And I do believe that in some states you do it quite naturally, but as we've seen from the oxygen advantage and other types of courses, people do tend to overbreathe,
Yeah.
and that can cause problems.
Right, right. And if you're over breathing anyway, of course, and you're in sort of something like the military, and especially the Navy, and you're faced with a stressful situation, then you have less of a chance, I suppose, of responding as opposed to reacting emotionally, right?
Certainly,
Mm,
absolutely. I mean, nobody knows how different people will react
right.
to any given situation,
Yeah.
but I think the more, sorry, the less anxious you are, the better able you are to deal with situations.
Yeah, that's so interesting in terms of before when you were saying about how you used to train people, and I'm sure you even train people now and when you work with fitness, but that you say just relax, just slow down a bit, less is more. Because if you just push, 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 eventually that's going to lead to fatigue, burnout, stress, right? And just a lack of coherence in general. And that's not great for facing those life or death situations, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, and,
Mm,
and, and we did push, 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 push. Now,
right.
of course, especially for myself, I have learned that, as you said, less is more.
Right.
And I've used that also when I've been training people,
Yeah.
because I've always thought, you know, it's no good to break. You need to build.
Mm,
And even like I say, that I've always been of the knowledge that when you're training people, you need to be able to encourage them. You
yeah.
need to be able to build them. You need to be able to bring them through.
Yeah.
And and fitness, I use the word fitness. I quite don't really like it because
No.
it does it does build all sorts of weird pictures.
Yeah.
But even when I was doing personal training for individuals after I
Mm.
left the Navy, I used to say to people, if you're doing this to look good, then you've come to the wrong place. If you're doing this to feel good, then you're in the right place, because exercise is just
Wow.
a small part of it. Exercise is so important. Exercise keeps you mobile, it keeps you moving, it keeps you feeling good, it keeps you well, but it's
Mm.
just a small part. And now we're
Mm.
finding that with things like breathing is just another, if you like, string to your bow, a very, very
Mm.
important one. And
Absolutely.
I've learned such a lot through getting into the oxygen advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I know you've been working with a lot of rugby. You played a lot of rugby yourself, and you were coaching rugby for a long time too. And I
Yeah,
know that the oxygen advantage, of course, you're an oxygen advantage instructor, same as myself, and that with the use of um, things like repeat sprintability and different things like that, and
fantastic.
incorporating
Yeah,
breath
yeah.
holding, how have you found that with rugby players? Because I'm sure a lot of the guys listening won't actually have heard of incorporating breath work into things like rugby or football or those sort of male dominated sports before.
Absolutely. The few people that I have worked with, and a few rugby players as well recently, I have built in some of the repeated sprintability. I don't tell them that's what it's called, um, but I do, put them over because they're not top professionals, I put them over a shorter distance
Right.
of 30 to 40 meters of sprinting, holding their breath.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I don't do too many of them because I don't want to frighten them away.
Mm,
But there has definitely been an improvement over a couple of months
yeah.
of their performance. Covering the ground a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Um, I even think it makes them a little bit core stronger. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
There's
if,
another.
sorry, go on, go on.
No, there was another thing I was going to say.
Mm,
I've always been inquisitive and with fitness, and many
yeah.
years ago, I did a course with Paul Check.
All
I
right.
don't know if you've come across Paul Check,
I
but
haven't, no.
no, well, he's maybe he's finished now. I don't know, but he did a lot of sort of off the wall stuff that people didn't really identify with. And he was
Right.
one of the first people to talk about core strength.
Mm,
And of course, the diaphragm is part of the core. It's
yeah.
very important, for bracing and things like that. But he also was the first person to talk to me about the tongue, position of the tongue.
Really? Ah,
And I did this thing with, I don't know if you know too much about rugby, but when the scrum comes together,
yeah,
there's rather a lot of weight coming through these 8 people,
yeah.
and the three guys at the front on each team
Hmm.
take an awful lot of weight coming through them as they
Right.
come together.
Yeah.
And I taught my boys to just start putting the tongue in the roof of their mouth
Yeah.
as they came together. And they were amazed at the difference, how much stronger it made them on the contact.
Yeah.
And
There's
I
so much
even,
research now, isn't there,
oh,
about
fantastic.
that tongue connection to the core, and it's incredible. And I'm
And
glad
for
you,
posture, of course.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That
Yeah.
abdominal pressure, that tongue position, it's so important. So
And
important.
I even use that now. Well, I'm actually quite fortunate. I think my tongue is fairly natural
Mm,
in the roof of my mouth. But if I'm doing my weight training,
yeah.
then I make sure that I've got my tongue comfortably into the roof of my mouth.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. And with, I don't know about you, but with rugby players, even just bringing their attention to their breathing, even if it's in terms of sports performance, surely that's got to make you a lot more aware of what your body's actually doing, a lot more aware of how you move and sort of how you play. And that's got to reduce risk of injury in itself, right?
but yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't like to any figures
No,
to
no,
quote that
but
or even
you'd
prove that,
think, you'd think.
but from my own experiences and think, if you are doing stuff like that, it is just so advantageous to you and the recovery because the phases of play now in rugby at the top level they go on for several minutes, and
Yeah,
I guess we couldn't even ask them to nose breathe for that amount of time, but the more
right.
they do that in training, the more they are going to recover.
Yeah. And like you said before, I don't think a lot of people, certainly in the more sort of world where rugby is more of a hobby than a professional career, but a lot of people think of sport as something quite separate to life. Like you go and do your sports practice and that's your workout, or you go to the gym and you exercise and that's it. But like you said, when that's just one tiny slice of the pie, when it comes to sports performance, how did your rugby players react if you did start talking about getting a good night's sleep? If you started talking about, breathing in and out your nose, not just while you're exercising, actually while you're asleep and while you're going about your day to day and things like that?
Sure. Well, they did think I was a bit strange when I
Did they?
first started all that. Yeah. And getting amateur rugby players to go to bed early enough is quite difficult. But I think if you keep talking about it, if you keep highlighting the points of what you're after, and I guess I was also fairly lucky having a good relationship with the
Mm,
players I had. I always had a fair relationship because I was never one of those who they knew was going to beast them around. I was never one of that. So they always knew that anything I talked about with them had come from some form of scientific background.
right.
So that was fairly simple. I think maybe at the professional um, era is probably a little bit more difficult,
Right.
because they're fairly entrenched in their ways
Yeah, yeah,
and getting to change.
same with like you were saying with the Navy perhaps as well, the military, that it takes a long time to get this stuff through, right? Because especially British people, they're so into that tradition of
Absolutely,
of
yeah,
that's just the way it is.
yeah.
And
And that's the way it's always been, and that's
yeah, you hear it all the
yeah.
time, and I just wonder if actually it's time to move on from the no pain, no gain thing,
Oh,
especially in terms of like male dominated sports,
do you know that phrase drives me insane?
does it?
No
Yeah.
pain, no gain. I've never subscribed to it. It's total nonsense.
Yeah.
If your body says pain, it means don't do it.
Right.
If it says I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable, well then maybe you can do it.
Right.
But that's and that's what I used to teach as well when I became a tutor for Premier Training.
Mm.
You know, no pain, no gain. It's just nonsense,
Yeah, and
along
it
with many of the other myths.
exactly, and it lies very much in the ego, doesn't it? That phrase, the no pain, no gain, where
Yeah,
men are
yeah,
sort of, comparing how much pain they went through and how little sleep
yeah.
did you do this on and all the rest. And I wonder what your opinion is on if it definitely is time to move away from that and actually start looking after our bodies a bit more.
Well, I moved away from it a long, long time ago, and
Mm,
I would advise anybody who's in the coaching, training, physical world, to just think about it a little bit. If your body is telling you it's in pain,
mm,
then it's in pain, and it's telling you, if you keep doing that, you idiot, I'm going to I'm going to break.
yeah,
On the other hand, if you calm down and there's a bit of discomfort and you're supplying a bit more blood and a bit more oxygen by your breathing to those muscles that are hurting, then maybe I will repair for you. But
mm,
you can go on bashing your body for 20, 30, 40 years, and the body is just so wonderful that it
yeah,
will take everything you throw at it
right,
and it will do its best.
yeah,
And then one day it will say, enough, you are a complete idiot. Look what you've done. And that's when people get all sorts of injuries later in life. They never
mm,
think back to what they've been doing for the last 30 years.
yeah,
They just consider, well, maybe I did something yesterday.
yeah,
No, it's your body. Give your body everything it wants.
yeah.
It is the most wonderful doctor in the world.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, your breath is the most accurate sort of description of exactly where you are in that moment, isn't it? It's sort of
Yeah,
no doctor can be quite as accurate as your breath is in telling you how you're doing.
no, and if we switch back to breath, because really that's what we wish to be talking about more than anything else. When I first, because I first came across, I guess it with Wim Hof.
Yeah,
Um,
as many are still
many
at the
because
moment.
he seems to have more of a public persona than
Mm,
than Patrick did have.
yeah,
So I went through all that, and I thought, well, this is really good, And I've always been an advocate of the cold,
yeah.
and my wife thinks I'm crazy. He thinks, why do you have a cold shower every day? Why?
I do too. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It's
yeah,
so energizing, and I find it really good for my
absolutely.
muscles as I do a lot of
Yeah,
cycling, and I
okay.
find it really, really great for my muscles
And
for sure.
yeah, and if there's any snow around, then I like to go and roll in it. So
Brilliant.
all that cold is perfect for me. So all
Yeah.
of those things, so Wim Hof I came across initially
Mm.
and did that, and then sometime after that I came across Patrick as you have done, and it just blew my mind, and the
Yeah.
stuff
Me too.
when I went on that course, just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's so
And
simple. This is why I think actually a lot of people do sort of like shove it to one side almost at first hearing it because it's just so simple. They say, "Yeah, I'm breathing. I've been breathing my whole life," and it's like,
yeah,
"Yeah, but have you
how
have
are
you
you
ever
breathing?
actually
Mm.
brought your awareness to how you're breathing because it has the power to actually like really positively elevate so many different parts of your life."
Yeah, and again, because I mentioned my wife thinks I'm mad because I have a cold shower. We spend a fair bit of time in Italy because
Okay.
we used to work out there, and we have some massive mountains behind where we are,
Brilliant.
and we have been walking up those mountains, both of us, nose breathing, for some time
Amazing.
now, and it's amazing how much easier it
Yeah.
gets.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't, I mean, these are mountains, these are steep, you
Yeah.
know, and you would think I'd be blowing quite hard, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely incredible. I think this can't be right. This
Right.
can't work like this, but it does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
So the nasal breathing is something that I wish I'd come across 50 years ago, but there you go.
It's so simple. And it's
Mm.
interesting, isn't it, actually, that when you do tell people about different things, especially about mouth taping at night, which is
Yeah,
something I've been doing to breathe through my nose while I sleep, which a lot of people think I'm absolutely mental when they're like, what? You put a piece of tape across your mouth at night? Um, but it's so incredibly effective. And I say to people, just do it. Like, I could talk about it for days, but just do it, and then you'll understand.
I do it as well. And again, without sort of giving too much away, because I'm slightly older, I was starting to slip into that snoring type of sleep apnea thing as you go on. And since I've been mouth taping, no, completely gone.
Incredible.
I sleep really deeply, and it's just lovely to wake up with that. After taping your mouth at night. Very good.
Well, there's just so many studies about how mouth breathing is just such a contributor, and often actually the leading cause to snoring and sleep apnea. And so many people are blissfully unaware that humans should not snore. It is not a natural thing.
Yeah, and going through the night with your mouth taped, you're getting all that nitric oxide down into your lungs, and you're getting that lovely vasodilation and everything else that's occurring in your body. So it's just so helpful, so healthy.
Yeah, so helpful, so healthy, 100%. It's interesting how you started with Wim Hof, and so many people are starting their journey of breathing with Wim Hof because it's blown up over the last few years, of course. And it's interesting to me with a lot of men jumping on the breathwork journey that Wim Hof and the Oxygen Advantage are all based on performance and resilience and increasing stamina and performance and resilience. And I wonder if before, and I'm interested on your take on this, on whether it was sort of shunted off a lot by a lot of men because they thought breathing was either for women or for yogis or for hippies, because there was a lot of sort of different connotations associated with meditation and mindfulness, that it was all very wit woo and sort of I hope with the likes of Wim Hof and Patrick McGowan, where people understand that it's breathing is so much more than that, and it can elevate your strength and your resilience, that a lot of men will now jump on board.
I think you're right. Yeah, I do think the fact that you've got Wim Hof and Patrick doing the podcasts and the books and everything else, I certainly think that there will be a lot more men. I'm not sure about whether it was always thought to be a female trait. You may be right.
Not completely, but I definitely, in my experience of, I've done, yoga for a long time, ever since I was an adult, really. And every yoga class, of course, it is totally dominated by women, and every meditation session, you'd sort of see 20 women to one man. And I'd love to see that slightly balance out a little bit more.
I was quite surprised when I went on my Patrick's course to see that it was almost 50-50.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Even it may have been slightly more men than women.
I think once you add the term sports
surprised me.
Yeah, once you add the term sports performance, I think then men come running.
Yeah, sure. But, I would like just to take them back. Sports performance is great, but your sports performance life is virtually short than the rest of your life is long, we hope, longer. And so that's what we should be paying attention to.
100%.
How we are after sport, maybe.
100%. And maybe if we can bring some people in that wouldn't usually come to breathwork with the term sports performance, we can then lead them to bring their attention more to their everyday lives as well, and gain those benefits.
Well, I think once they see, the likes of the sleep, and the everyday, if you like, the everyday health, especially now we've got this thing going on, people should be encouraged maybe not to wear a mask, and they should be encouraged to breathe through their nose.
Yeah, exactly, because it's antiviral as well, isn't it?
Antiviral, antiviral, antibacterial, it's all there.
Yeah.
So we should be encouraged to do those. And I've had some good results with people I've worked with. People who've had asthma, who now no longer need their inhaler.
Amazing.
And people with maybe some health problems who have improved their fitness even.
Brilliant.
I've got one chap who's very, very senior, and I probably maybe don't do too much with him because of his age, but his fitness levels are just walking are improving
Wow.
just by getting him to breathe every now and again correctly.
Yeah, and that's an improvement to quality of life as well, isn't it?
It's improving his posture as well.
Wow.
He's starting to stand a bit straighter.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those things are just so important.
Now, incredible. Wow. I know from doing a little bit of research, of course, that you were made an MBE, and I would love to hear the story behind that, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, you don't get to know a lot about it, to be frank.
Right.
I mean, it was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Just happened, a letter dropped through the post box one Saturday morning, and one of my kids ran up to me and said, "Dad, there's a letter for you." And I said, "No, the postman's been ages ago." He said, "No, it's a letter for you." And so I opened it, and it was specially delivered. And I just talk about stress. When I opened that letter, I probably did start to overbreathe.
Yeah.
It just took me back, and it said, that Her Majesty had the privilege of bestowing the MBE on me, and I was just breathless for some time. But anyway, it was a lovely occasion going to the palace and receiving it off the Queen. And I don't think I'm giving any secrets away. And the Queen just said to me, "I understand you keep my sailors fit."
Oh, bless
Which was
her.
lovely. Yeah.
Oh,
lovely.
What an incredible experience.
It was a wonderful experience. And you don't really get to know why you've been nominated. But
really? They don't tell you?
No, because you get nominated. And I guess if I'd have been like one of these wonderful people that cross the road with kids all the time in every weather, and they get awarded, I guess you sort of know that that's what they've got the award for. But I was told it was a mixture of sort of the position I'd attained within the Navy and my rugby that I'd given back to rugby. So and a bit of charity work. So
amazing.
It was a mixture of three, I think. Yeah.
Amazing, brilliant.
It was a wonderful day.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I wanted to talk a little bit really about your approach now to helping anyone really in their pursuit of fitness, especially. What is your approach with the Oxygen Advantage, especially, that you take with people? Where do you start?
I actually start any fitness work I do now with anybody that's new. I start with breathing.
Right.
That's first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Because if they come to me and I see that they're not nasal breathing, then I'm not going to get the best results that I now know about. So I would always start with breathing. I would obviously go through the BOLT, the body oxygen level test, see where they're at.
Right.
And then probably wouldn't get on too much to any form of other fitness work until we'd got the nasal breathing sorted out. Yeah. I would utilize the breath holds, and little experiments with them like that so they could see how they were improving. And then I think once they get to understand they are making improvements, then you've got them. And then you can start doing the other work, and then insisting as much as possible, whatever they do, keep the mouth closed, breathe through the nose. Yeah. Only if you train somebody really hard, which I'm probably not doing so much of now, would you need to open the mouth. Absolutely. It's not necessary. Not necessary.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. So do you sort of hope that we're going to see a lot more breath work coming into sports and the military in general in the future? Do you think it's going to be a mainstream thing fast forward sort of 20 years or so?
I see no reason why it shouldn't. Absolutely not, because when you're talking, and everything filters down from top level sport, really. Yeah. When you're talking about people keeping fit, even it comes down from the top, it filters down. And so, the words we used to use, everybody in sport is looking for 1%, maybe not even 1%, 0.5%. That's all you need for the advantage over your opposition.
Yeah.
So anything that's going to give you that percentage of improvement, then they would be silly not to investigate it. You know, things like your vision, things like, you know, breathing has got to come to the fore now. And even if you're just using it in training, you've got to be thinking about all of these things are going to give me that edge that I'm looking for.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've just got one last question for you. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot myself and have absolutely been fascinated by your story. But to anyone listening who's thinking of starting their career in at least any sort of military form, what advice would you give to them now that you wish you'd been told when you were starting?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult one because I've been out now over 20 years. I did 32 years.
But I'm sure you learned a lot in those 32 years, right?
I did. It was very much learn as you go. The only advice I would give to people now, and if it's still the same, I'm hoping it's still the same, is just get in and embrace it, because the people that you meet who have done military training are just some of the most wonderful people. Obviously, not everybody's the same, but you meet the most wonderful people, and it'll give you the greatest career, you know, and experiences that you would never get anywhere else.
Right.
So any advice I would give to people would always be positive ones.
Right.
Get in, embrace it. It's going to be tough times.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of good times.
Right. Right. But also maybe to go in with that sort of take it easy kind of thing of don't go in and thrash yourself.
No, there's going to be people, of course, who are going to want you to thrash yourself.
Right.
And there will be times when it might be necessary to thrash yourself.
Right.
But then again, you have to then come down the other side of the mountain. You have to recover. You have to, you know, sleep. You have to breathe. All of those things. So there will be times when it's going to be like that. But take your own opportunities to breathe.
Yeah, what a great mantra for life, in that I don't think just in the military and sports, but in today's sort of really fast-paced world, I don't think anyone is taking enough time to recover personally.
I would agree. A lot of the businesses now, they demand too much from people, in my humble estimation. They demand too much. I mean, before everybody was sort of sent home, I can recall being on the train coming back from London and looking at people who were getting on the train, and I thought, this is the Walking Dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and there were people, and I wanted to say to people, stop breathing through your mouth, but of course I daren't do that. Right. But you could see people on the train gasping. Yeah. And you think, not everybody, of course, but they were the Walking Dead. And put those damn phones down.
Right.
Put the damn phone down and breathe.
Yeah. You know, I think it's something that not just young people, but so many people need to hear is slow down, put the phone down and breathe. It's almost like we've lost touch with ourselves and we rely on this thing to, you know, take us through our entire lives. There's so many people these days, right, that if they lost their phone, they would lose a part of themselves.
I probably shouldn't say this to you, but it just drives me mad in the gym.
Does it?
People walking around with their phones, and they might do a set of something and they pick their phone up, and then they sit there and they put it down, and they do another set of exercise, and they pick their phone up. They do another set and they pick their phone up. You think, Christ's sake, leave your phone at home.
Yeah. Do you think every time you're picking your phone up, you're sort of removing yourself from the experience of whatever you're doing?
Of course you are. And like Patrick says about you're removing yourself from your mind, you know, you're just looking for some crutch.
Yeah.
And instead of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I think, you know, the bravest thing you can do, which actually I think is terrifying for most people in this day and age, is actually sit down and be with yourself. And I think it's something many people are actually terrified to do, is if you put your phone down for, say, a week, you know, really put it somewhere where you can't get it, you would have to sit with yourself and your own thoughts and your own breath. And that, for a lot of people, is terrifying.
It's like I say to most people, do you know what's going through my mind most of the time? Nothing.
Mm-hmm. And how blissful is that?
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a fault on my part, but no,
absolutely not. You know, there's some famous teachers of Buddhism that are exactly the same. These incredible teachers with all this incredible experience in spiritual healing, and they've reached thousands and thousands of people with their teachings, and they'll go to an interview and someone will be there with their notepad, so excited to ask them and find out all this knowledge, and they'll say, you know, what do you think about on a day-to-day basis? And they go, absolutely nothing. And they're like, oh, right. They expect, you know, all this huge, and they say nothing. The power is in the stillness and the silence. And that is 10 times braver than any kind of, well, of course, I'm talking to someone in the military, so I have to be careful what I say. But I
understand.
In some ways, sitting with yourself in the silence is braver than, you know, running all the marathons in the world and doing all these tough, crazy things. That actually being brave enough to just let go of all those little crutches. Because that's what a phone is, right? It's a crutch. It's a safety net.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful.
And it's something that, you know, we weren't born with.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, we can do without.
Right.
You know, like I said, your body is the greatest doctor.
Yeah.
And if you give your body all it needs in good nutrition, good rest, good oxygen, it doesn't need anything else.
Right. And everything else is just an addition. And it's not, like we said before, less is more, right? So it's not always a positive addition.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the oxygen advantage, I think, is something that I'm hoping that we can start to get around a lot more people.
Absolutely.
Because it's extremely, or even if just people do learn just to breathe.
100%. I mean, the oxygen advantage and just learning more about how much power I have within myself in terms of breathing has absolutely changed my life. And it sounds like it has yours as well.
Certainly in terms of, I don't want to go there again, but certainly in terms of fitness, fitness has improved. And I think strength as well, because at a certain time you should start to lose muscle tissue and strength, but I'm not seeing a great deal of that just by keeping the breathing going.
Yeah.
And of course, that incorporates the sleep and the rest.
Yeah, which incorporates that blissful clarity of thought as well, right? And clarity of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something I plan to keep doing.
Excellent. Great. Mike, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today.
It's been my pleasure too.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pleasure.